Welcome, my name is Rachel. I used to think that love was easy. You find someone, get married, and be happy. When I married Marcus, I thought our lives would be perfect forever. He was charming and reliable, and for a while it felt like a fairy tale. But fairy tales don't tell you what happens after year 8, when routine takes the place of passion, and conversations become fleeting memories of what they used to be. We had a beautiful home in the suburbs, a cozy little space we had decorated together when we were still in that sweet honeymoon phase. Marcus worked long hours as a financial analyst, and I ran a small online boutique from home. Our lives were stable and predictable, but we were slowly drifting apart. When Marcus told me that his younger brother Ethan would be staying with us for a while, I wasn't too excited. Ethan had always been the free spirit of the family, the artist, the dreamer, and the one who moved from city to city following his passions instead of paychecks. I hadn't seen him in years, not since our wedding, and even then he was just the crazy little brother who drank too much champagne and danced like no one was watching. "He just needs a place to crash for a few weeks," Marcus said one night as we ate dinner in near silence. "He lost his job and broke up with his girlfriend. He's having a rough time." I agreed because he was family. The night Ethan came over, I was setting the table when I heard the front door open. He was taller than I remembered, a little scruffier, and he was carrying a worn-out duffel bag over his shoulder, but his eyes were the same, warm, bright, and curious. "Rachel," he said with a smile. I chuckled. "Flattery already, you must really need a place to stay." He grinned and hugged me, and in that moment I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. The first few days were harmless. Ethan settled in quickly, helping around the house and making jokes that lightened the heavy atmosphere Marcus and I had built up. He cooked breakfast when I was still dragging myself out of bed, and he always asked how my day was going. Marcus, on the other hand, was always too tired or too busy. The man I once couldn't wait to see every evening now barely glanced at me between emails and phone calls. Ethan noticed one night as we sat on the porch sipping tea, he looked at me and said, "You okay?" I hesitated. "I'm fine. You sure don't look fine. You look tired, and not just physically." He asked me that, which caught me off guard. No one had asked me that in a long time. I wanted to tell him everything, but I didn't. Instead, I smiled and changed the subject. But after that, something changed. And the more time we spent together, the more I noticed it. The way he really listened, the way he made me laugh without trying, and the way he laughed at the little things. Marcus stopped noticing years ago the way he said my name, like it mattered. And then came the night everything changed. Marcus had gone on a last-minute business trip, leaving Ethan and me alone in the house. It was raining hard outside, and the power flickered, eventually cutting out completely. I lit some candles, and we sat in the living room talking about everything and nothing. "You know," Ethan said softly, "I used to think you were too good for Marcus." I blinked what he looked at me seriously. "Even back then you had this spark. I don't think he ever really knew what to do with it." I felt my heart pounding. "That's not fair," I whispered. "Maybe not, but it's true." There was a silence that stretched too long, the kind that says more than words ever could. I stood up, my mind racing, and told him I was going to bed. But sleep never came that night. The next morning I tried to shake it off, act like nothing had happened, but Ethan wasn't avoiding it. He was calm, collected, and somehow more confident. The energy between us was undeniable. Now a tension that made it hard to breathe when we were in the same room one afternoon. As I folded laundry in the bedroom, he came in holding a cup of coffee. "Peace offering," he said with a smile. I took it, trying not to meet his eyes. "Thanks, I meant what I said." He added, "You deserve more than being someone's afterthought." I didn't respond. I couldn't, because deep down I knew he was right. Marcus came back after a few days, but things didn't go back to normal. In fact, the differences between him and Ethan became even more clear. Marcus barely noticed I'd rearranged the living room. Ethan noticed before I said anything. Marcus forgot my birthday dinner. Ethan baked me a cake. The guilt nodded at me. I tried to focus on salvaging my marriage, But every time Marcus brushed me off or chose work over a conversation, I felt the sting of being invisible. And every time Ethan smiled or offered to help, I felt something dangerously close to longing. Then one night it happened. Marcus had gone out with colleagues, and Ethan and I were watching a movie somewhere between laughter and shared glances. His hand brushed against mine, neither of us moved. Then slowly he leaned closer. "Rachel," he whispered, his voice barely audible. I looked at him, torn between everything I knew was right and everything I desperately wanted to feel again. I didn't say a word, but I didn't pull away either. Nothing happened that night, nothing physical at least. But something had already changed. A line had been crossed, even if only emotionally. And that was the part that scared me the most. The next few days were a blur of confusion. I avoided Ethan. I tried to reconnect with Marcus. I told myself it was just a phase, a moment of weakness. But when Ethan finally cornered me in the kitchen and asked what I wanted, I didn't know how to answer. "I don't want to hurt him," I said. "But are you happy?" Ethan asked. And I couldn't lie, I wasn't. That night I lay awake for hours. I thought about who I used to be, the girl who danced in the rain and dreamed of big love, the woman who had settled for quiet dinners alone and conversations that never went beyond "how was work?" The next morning I asked Marcus if we could talk. We sat at the table, the same one where we'd shared 1,000 meals but few real moments in recent years. "I'm not happy," I said gently. "I think we've lost each other." He looked at me like, "Is this about Ethan?" No, it was about us. We talked for hours. He cried, I cried, and for the first time in a long time, we were honest. We decided to split up, not because we were mad, but because it was time to stop pretending. Ethan moved out a few days later to give Marcus and me space to figure things out, and I didn't see him again for weeks. Eventually, Marcus and I filed for divorce. It was respectful and bittersweet because we both knew we had stayed together for too long for the wrong reasons. After a few months of focusing on myself, healing, and finding the things I loved, Ethan finally showed up at my shop. "I waited," he said, "because I didn't want to be the reason you left. I just wanted you to be happy." "I'm getting there," I smiled. "Can I take you out sometime?" I asked. Yes and no. It wasn't a fairy tale ending, it was something better. It was complicated and full of options, but for the first time in years, I felt alive. Because sometimes better doesn't mean perfect. It just means finally choosing what's right for